Trump gave what I think was probably one of the greatest speeches of world leaders given. You know, it's got to be up there with like Churchill, Gettysburg Address. It was the night the United States killed the leader of ISIS. Trump comes out of the Situation Room at like midnight in the White House, and he walks down that fucking tunnel like he gives a press conference, like he's giving a post-game NBA, and just goes, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. He died like a dog. I didn't change one word of that. That's what he opened with. And then he did 40 minutes. The speech is 40 minutes. The meanest shit talk you've ever heard in front of the whole world. Abu. We could hear him crying. I said, Abu, don't cry. Let me tell you something. Abu cried. He cried quite a bit. I wouldn't have cried. Cry baby Baghdadi. That's what we were all calling it.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, July the 16th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 strategies of war, and Donald Trump. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, guess what? It's time for Stu Varney in the headlines.
From the opening bell, and we've got a Dow Industrials up 141. Stay with Fox Business. Barney and Company picks it up now. Stu, take it away.
I will take it. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Another night of contrast between the two campaigns. Donald Trump enters the convention hall to resounding cheers. The Republicans joyful that he survived an assassin's bullet. Trump seemed overwhelmed by the emotion in the crowd. He choked up. Is this the new Trump? Then his pick for vice president appeared, J.D. Vance. Youthful, 39 years old, If Trump wins, Vance may well become the 48th president and the future of the Republican Party for many years to come. Meanwhile, the 81-year-old president struggled through an interview with NBC's Lester Holt. He got angry, frequently railed at what he called Trump's lies, and insisted his mental acuity has been, quote, pretty damn good, end quote. What a contrast. The Republicans look to the future, the Democrat president defends the past. To the markets, retail sales unchanged in June, limited impact on stocks. We had new highs for stocks on Monday's close, small gains on the market this morning. That's pre-market. Dow up maybe 100, S&P 10, Nasdaq 53. Interest rates at lower levels. The 10-year Treasury is well below 4.25%, 4.21 to be precise. The 2-year below 4.5%. We're at 4.47. Bitcoin holding around $63,000. That's 63.2, I believe. Gas, let's see, we got that down 1 cent, 3.51, and diesel no change at 3.85. All right, politics. The Washington Post reports that the president will today announce a plan to cap rent increases. He will also make another play for the black vote when he addresses a meeting of the NAACP. New developments in the attempted assassination. Video shows passers-by spotted the shooter on a rooftop several minutes before shots were fired. Someone dropped the ball. On the show today, the Wall Street Journal says Elon Musk has told sources he will give $45 million a month to a super PAC that supports Donald Trump. The money goes to America PAC, which is concentrating on getting voters in swing states to request mail-in ballots. Musk calls that fake news. Tuesday, July 16th, 2024.
And that was The Bloody Tourist with the headlines. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Stuart Varney's My Take.
J.D. Vance strides into the Republican convention. He's Donald Trump's pick for vice president. Now, he is 39. He's the Republican Party's future. On the very same night, President Biden was interviewed on NBC. Biden is 81. He's the Democrat Party's past. What a contrast. The future and the past, the young and the old. I found it painful to watch the president. My opinion, he's just too old for the job. And he spent much of the interview trying desperately to show he's still got it. He got feisty with his interviewer, Lester Holt. Why don't you guys ever talk about the 28 lies Trump told during the debate? So much for lowering the political temperature. Asked about his cognitive decline, he got testy again. He said, I've done 22 major events. My mental acuity has been pretty damn good. It was noticeable that our president spent virtually no time looking to the future, and whatever vision he has for America, it was a defense of the past, which highlighted the difficulties of the present. J.D. Vance was someone else. Some commentators have criticized his policies, but it wasn't policy that was on display last night. It was his youth and how long he's going to be shaping the Republican Party. If Trump wins this November, J.D. Vance could very likely be the 48th president. He would be in his 40s, just like John Kennedy when he took office in 1960. Vance has 3 young children. Trump asked to speak to his 7-year-old, and the young man was very happy. That's a touching idea, a touching thing to do. Imagine having youngsters in the White House again. Vance looks to the future, highlighting the opportunities of the present. As of now, the Republican Party is united around Trump and his youthful vice president. The Democrats are divided. It is the age and decline of their leader. That's the problem. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
And that was Stuart Varney's My Take. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the Patriotic Shorts.
The job and the shift that my fellow Marine and I were on top of that roof. As they did every day, the enemy initiated a daylight attack. And until the past few days, we had not seen hand grenades throughout our deployment. Afghanistan, especially Marja, we were fighting across fields and tree line to tree line and canal to canal. And so, unlike Iraq, which more of the fighting was urban environments, house to house and street to street, closer proximity to throw grenades. But Afghanistan, we had not got that close on a consistent enough basis to be able to throw hand grenades. We were towards the end of our 4-hour shift, and it was mid-afternoon, and the attack started.
If the U.S. decided to deploy the B-2 bomber, it still might not actually happen because of one shocking reason. Let me explain. The B-2 bomber's stealth capabilities make it a valuable target. Unlike the B-1 and B-52 bombers, which are always used for training missions and weapons drops, the B-2 is rarely ever flown. The B-1 and B-52 patrol areas close to enemy territory like the South China Sea, the Black Sea, and the Arctic Circle to show U.S. military power. But the B-2's stealth abilities mean it needs to stay inside the United States. If its radar cross-section capability is detected even once, it loses its biggest advantage. Every time the B-2 flies close to another country, it gives enemies a chance to test their radar systems against it. So when can the B-2 actually be used? The B-2 is saved for first day of war missions, where the enemy's defenses are strong and the airspace is dangerous. However, for most current U.S. missions, the B-2's advanced capabilities aren't needed.
This is the A-10 Warthog, and this is the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barrel Gatling gun capable of firing 3,900 rounds per minute, each round roughly the size of a Coke bottle. In fact, this entire aircraft was essentially designed around the gun itself, and if you come follow me, you can see that the gun extends roughly about right here. In fact, underneath you can actually see the guts of the gun itself. I mean, look at that. It's pretty crazy. This gun is so big that the nose landing gear actually has to be offset from the center line to account for just how big it is. And my favorite illustration of that is this iconic photo of the GAU-8 Avenger next to a Volkswagen completely overshadowing it. I guess you can say this is the only gun in history that gets its own aircraft.
I think the rule of law and law enforcement is the backbone of America. There are other countries that are democracies. Ours is not. We are a constitutional republic. These politicians will tell you all the time, oh, it's a threat to democracy, it's a threat to... No, we're not a democracy. Democracy is mob rule. Democracy means that the loudest voice gets the attention. A constitutional republic is different. The constitutional republic is the consent of the governed. We get to dictate what happens, and we send representatives back to D.C. or to the state to do so. Really, what defines America is the rule of law, our ability to maintain order, our ability to live by a set of principles and rules. That's what makes America different from these other countries. When I got into law enforcement, I understood how important the job I was doing was. And I loved it. I felt blessed to be able to do that job on a daily basis and be able to go out and protect my community and do something that I think was imperative and vital to America and our survivability.
On December 6, 1941, the British submarine HMS Perseus struck a mine while on patrol in the Mediterranean. In a short time, she was at the bottom of the sea, a tomb for most of her crew of 59 and 2 passengers. One of those passengers, John Capes, managed to get out of the sub through the escape hatch. Capes' story was so fantastic that for more than half a century, many doubted his claims, mainly because no one should have been able to get to the surface alive at the depth he claimed. On December 26, 1997, Greek divers discovered the wreckage of HMS Perseus under 52 meters of water several miles from the island of Kefalonia. The cracked hull of the bow was consistent with a mine explosion. The aft escape hatch was open. The depth gauge incorrectly showed 82 meters instead of the actual depth. Even at 52 meters, 170 feet, John Capes would have set a new record for surviving a shipwreck.
The unique and fantastic thing about a Spitfire is its wing. Taking 3 times as many man-hours to build the Spitfire wing as it took Messerschmitt to build a mass-produced 109 wing. Spitfire's beautiful elliptical wing is very thin. If you press the side of it, it's like the back of a fork. But disadvantage is you have to splay the guns out quite a lot. The cannons initially that were put into Spitfires were not popular because of the wing. They had to tilt the cannons on the side, and if the pilot pulled any high G maneuvers, as a fighter pilot would when he's trying to fight for his life, the guns would jam. Another feature of a Mark I Spitfire, the ailerons, very basic. Irish linen to be precise, and doped and moulded to a streamlined shape, as also is the elevator and rudders.
And that was the Patriotic Shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, a little motivation.
Why is the truth so important? You have to have the truth to have a starting point. And your true self is found in that very uncomfortable zone. We all look for toughness. We all want it. But we look for it in a comfortable environment. You will not find toughness in a comfortable environment. Those of you who are listening to this, you will not find it. The only way you find it is to drown yourself in a position where you're just out of sorts, where you can't swim and you're drowning. Where you're drowning. When you say, you know what, ma'am? Dad, you're not trying hard enough. We all think we're trying hard, but once you come face to face with who you are, you have a starting point. It's in our head saying, you know what, man? Dude, you're not doing it. You're wasting a bunch of percentage here. In this other 80% is suffering, pain, failure, self-doubt, darkness, and then a whole bunch of light. But to get to this light, you gotta go through all of this. When that alarm clock goes off at 4 or 5 in the morning, your mind says no. You just say, this is what we do. It's what we do now. Because to get to where you want to go, the amount of pain involved, the amount of mental pain, of how many times you're going to have to do something that you don't want to do to get to where you want to go. And then once you do this over and over and over again, it becomes like breathing. I don't want to live this lifestyle, but to get to the other side of this, I have to. So if you really want it, you realize what trying is and what trying is not. Your brain is the most powerful weapon in the world. Once you put away your phones and your computers and all that stuff nowadays, yeah, that's great. We're up to date. You're not succeeding. You're not achieving. It's because you're afraid of going that dark place to find yourself. You're setting goals you know you can reach. And when you do that, that fear, that insecurity, that doubt, that's where you grow. You must always set goals that you think you cannot achieve. And then there you get better. Your brain is the only thing you have when you're going through depression, when you're going through hard times, when you're going through death. Real life, every day, you must ask yourself, did I do enough? You can't Google that, Ann. You're alone. You're alone. You may have a shrink you're going to. You may have a best friend you're going to. But there's 24 hours in a day when you're alone in this brain. And your brain is talking to you in all kind of ways. And it wants to control you, pull you in these different pockets. If you can't control your own brain and your brain controls you, you got to tell your brain where you want to go and how you want to go and how you want to get there. You got to control it. If not, it's over. So I realize if I keep going back and going back and going back until it just becomes, your mind will say, okay, we're going to figure it out. We'll find a way. Because he is not going to stop. It's not like, I'm going to try one more time. No. Alarm clock goes off, boop, we're going back. I can't read right, we're going back. I gave myself no way out, and my mind realized that. It's okay. We're going to adapt and overcome now. That was my mindset. And that's how you get through things. You put yourself, you immerse yourself wherever it is, and you become that. I became hell. And that became my new norm. I gave myself no way out. There was nothing outside these walls of hell. Nothing.
What was that feeling you wanted so bad? Respect? Accomplishment?
No. Victory. I wanted to win. Not like beat somebody else. It wasn't about that. I just wanted to go the distance. Everything in my life was something got hard, I quit. I had to work harder than me. So I quit. Like, man, if I could just go that distance, that extra mile, to just go, just to finish. I want to finish. I want to feel victory. And victory for me wasn't winning, it was just finishing. So I said, you know what? If I can feel like these guys feel, it would change my life. just by putting myself in the battle. I started realizing, man, just by going to war with myself every day and putting these challenges and these goals and these obstacles, these insurmountable obstacles, now we can move from there. If you look at it as, man, I'm broken and I'm still here. And I'm fighting. And I'm going to find a way to get through this because I have no other place to go. It gives you a lot of power. And no one really finds themselves without going through trials, tribulations, suffering, accountability. And accountability is suffering. Being accountable every day for doing right for yourself and the people next to you, it's miserable. The more I do this, the more I gain confidence. And then the more I gain confidence, the more I realize these Navy SEALs, man. These guys can't do what I'm doing right now. I had no coach, had no trainer, had no money. I didn't know how to lose weight. I had no knowledge of what I was doing. I was just working.
Thank you. And now, the Daily Stoic.
Reboot the real work. I am your teacher, and you are learning in my school. My aim is to bring you to completion, unhindered, free from compulsive behavior, unrestrained, without shame, free, flourishing, and happy, looking to God in things great and small. Your aim is to learn and diligently practice all these things. Why then don't you complete the work if you have the right aim, and I have both the right aim and right preparation? What is missing? The work is quite feasible and is the only thing in our power. Let go of the past. We must only begin. Believe me, and you will see. Epictetus, Discourses, 2.19.29 through 34. Do you remember in school or early in your life being afraid to try something because you feared you might fail at it? Most teenagers choose to fool around rather than exert themselves. Half-hearted, lazy effort gives them a ready-made excuse. It doesn't matter, I wasn't trying. As we get older, failure is not so inconsequential anymore. What's at stake is not some arbitrary grade or intramural sports trophy, but the quality of your life and your ability to deal with the world around you. Don't let that intimidate you, though. You have the best teachers in the world, the wisest philosophers who ever lived. And not only are you capable, the professor is asking for something very simple. Just begin the work. The rest follows.
And that was the Daily Stoic. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
A lot of the critics of religion today will say, well, isn't that nice? Religious people, they don't really know these things. They can't prove them scientifically. They have no good arguments for them. Rather, they're playing a kind of make-believe. I'll believe certain things on the basis of no evidence. That's not what believe means. When serious Christians use the term, it does not mean accepting things wildly on the basis of no evidence. It's one of the most misunderstood words in the religious lexicon. Authentic belief is never infra-rational. What I mean is it's never below reason. It's always supra-rational. It's beyond reason.
And that is Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, the perception of reality, the learning of facts, the ability to distinguish truth from falsehood are exclusively individual capacities. The mind is an exclusively individual affair. There's no such thing as a collective brain. And intellectual integrity, the refusal to sacrifice one's mind and one's knowledge of truth to any social pressures, is a profoundly and properly selfish attitude, unquote. And that's from the Comprachicos from the book The Return of the Primitive by Ayn Rand. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the 33 Strategies of War.
From Samurai Zen, The Warrior Koans, by Trevor Leggett. The priest Ryokan asked Zen master Bukan for an explanation of the 4 Dharma worlds. Bukan said, to explain the 4 Dharma worlds should not need a lot of chatter. He filled a white teacup with tea, drank it up, and smashed the cup to pieces right in front of the priest, saying, "Have you got it?" The priest said, "Thanks to your here and now teaching, I have penetrated right into the realm of principle and event."
And that was the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, if you're a Democrat, you should be voting Republican because the general distraction afflicting contemporary society does not allow the emphasis and energy of rage to arise. Rage is the capacity to interrupt a given state and make a new state begin. Today, it is yielding more and more to offense or annoyance, having a beef, which proves incapable of effecting decisive change. In consequence, one is annoyed even by the inevitable. Annoyance relates to rage as fear relates to dread. In contrast to fear, which concerns a determinate object, dread applies to being as such. It grips and shakes the whole of existence. Nor does rage concern a discrete state of affairs. It negates the whole. Therein lies its negative energy. It represents a state of exception. Increasing positivization makes the world poor in states of exception. Back in a minute. Thank you. So yesterday there was I didn't get to mention this yesterday, but yesterday there was a appellate court. I believe it was an appellate court. But anyways, a judge made a ruling throwing out one of the cases against Donald Trump because of Jack Smith, saying that Jack Smith is a private citizen and can't be appointed to prosecute on behalf of the government. That the only people that can do that are people that are appointed by the executive branch and confirmed by the Senate. And so it's another case of, because the fact that the government did this in the first place, got a private citizen to go ahead and prosecute this case, again demonstrates that there are people in government that think that government has rights, that it has the right to prosecute. And this judge said no. It was apparently, if you believe the rumors, that this judge was an appointee of Donald Trump, a Republican. So it makes sense. Republican judges, generally speaking, come down on the side of individual rights and deny government rights, as it should be, whereas Democrat appointees have a tendency to go to the other direction. So again, but make no mistake, this is another case of dueling rights. We can't continue to have this dueling rights thing going on in our country. At some point, we have to make a decision as people, as the voters and taxpayers, whether or not we're going to have government rights and the citizens have none, or the citizens have all the rights and the government has none, because that's the way it's got to go if we're going to have a functioning civilization. If we continue with this division of government rights versus individual rights, sooner or later it's going to catch up with us we are not going to be able to function as a society, and we will end up destroying ourselves or being destroyed by someone else. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the book that Don't Think of an Elephant by George Lakoff, I'm going to start doing that one on Tuesdays instead of the 13 Powers of Mind Control. I'm going to do that one on Saturdays. And I'm doing this one with George Lakoff on Tuesdays because I want to do complete chapters, because it is very, very important what he's teaching here about framing. Right now, going on in the country right now is a framing issue. And I'm watching all the Republicans, all the conservatives, so-called conservatives, get it wrong and allow the left to frame the argument. And that's the frame of violence. Notice that when President Biden came out to speak about the attempted assassination of former President Trump, he talked about violence. There's a reason for that. He wants to reframe the debate, because the debate should be about law enforcement, that it should be recognized that what that assassin, and they like, by the way, to use the word assassinate rather than murder, and what he did was murder and attempted murder. It is a law enforcement issue. When Biden and other people on the left reframe this as a violence issue, they're basically setting up a false dichotomy. You're with us or you're against us. Nobody on the right wants to be against the idea of reducing or eliminating violence. So they go along with it. Okay? They're afraid if they contest this in any way, shape, or form that they're going to get in trouble. And they probably would. It wouldn't make any sense for anybody to say, I'm pro-violence. That would be kind of foolish. But what it is a false dichotomy. You're with us or you're against us. And what do we do whenever we encounter a false dichotomy? We change the subject. In this particular case, the true subject is law enforcement. So we refuse to even discuss violence. And instead, what we do is we talk about law enforcement. We emphasize the fact that what this man did was murder and attempted murder. Now, furthermore, what the left can do when they say violence, since that's a vague term, what constitutes violence? And that's the whole point. The left then gets to decide. So if you come out and say, hi, I'm MAGA, they can say, oh, violence. That's violence. If you come out and say and object to anything that the left is putting across, they can claim that that is violence because they haven't bothered to define the term. They've left it open. They're playing it deuces wild here. So this is another good reason not to participate in their frame. For the true conservative, the idea is to be apathetic. Apathy doesn't mean not caring. Not caring is depressive. Apathy means I don't have to. So in this particular case, I don't have to participate in their frame. We can create a frame of our own. In this particular case, the frame is true, that this was a criminal act, not an act of violence, but a criminal act. And again, so you learn all of this from George Lakoff, and he explains all frames and how to frame, and he's basically talking to Democrats, but Republicans and would-be conservatives can learn from this as well. And I think it's so important that I need to spend more time with this book. So this is going to be 14 more minutes to conclude this chapter, and then starting next week Every Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a chapter a week. So here we go with the rest of this particular chapter. Let's see what we got here. It's chapter 2 of Don't Think of an Elephant by George Lakoff.
It is only in the wake of the 2008 Obama sweep that the radical conservative Tea Party movement has split from the previously unified conservative movement. The progressive world has not caught up. And what is worse is a set of myths believed by liberals and progressives. These myths come from a good source, but they end up hurting us badly. The myths began with the Enlightenment, and the first one goes like this. The truth will set us free. If we just tell people the facts, since people are basically rational beings, they'll all reach the right conclusions. But we know from cognitive science that people do not think like that. People think in frames. The strict father and nurturant parent frames each force a certain logic. To be accepted, the truth must fit people's frames. If the facts do not fit a frame, the frame stays and the facts bounce off. Why? Neuroscience tells us that each of the concepts we have, the long-term concepts that structure how we think, is instantiated in the synapses of our brains. Concepts are not things that can be changed just by someone telling us a fact. We may be presented with facts, but for us to make sense of them, they have to fit what is already in the synapses of the brain. Otherwise, facts go in and then they go right back out. They are not heard, or they are not accepted as facts, or they mystify us. Why would anyone have said that? Then we label the fact as irrational, crazy, or stupid. That's what happens when progressives just confront conservatives with the facts. It has little or no effect unless the conservatives have a frame that makes sense of the facts. Similarly, a lot of progressives hear conservatives talk and do not understand them because they do not have the conservatives' frames. They assume that conservatives are stupid. They are not stupid. They are winning because they are smart. They understand how people think and how people talk. They think. That is what those think tanks are about. They support their intellectuals. They write all those books. They put their ideas out in public. There are certainly cases where conservatives have lied. That is true. Of course, it is not true that only conservatives lie. But it is true that there were significant lies, even daily lies, by the Bush administration. However, it is equally important to recognize that many of the ideas that outrage progressives are what conservatives see as truths, presented from their point of view. We must distinguish cases of out-and-out distortion, lying, and so on, from cases where conservatives are presenting what they consider truth. Is it useful to go and tell everyone what the lies are? Well, it is certainly not useless or harmful for us to know when they are lying, but also remember that the truth alone will not set you free. The scientific facts about global warming are stated and restated day after day around the country, but they fall on conservative deaf brains, brains with frames that don't fit those facts. There is another myth that also comes from the Enlightenment, and it goes like this. It is irrational to go against your self-interest, and therefore a normal person who is rational reasons on the basis of self-interest. Modern economic theory and foreign policy are set upon the basis of that assumption. The myth has been challenged by cognitive scientists such as Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his theory, and Amos Tversky, who have shown that people do not really think that way. Nevertheless, most of economics is still based on the assumption that people will naturally always think in terms of their self-interest. This view of rationality comes into democratic politics in a very important way. It is assumed that voters will vote their self-interest. Democrats are shocked or puzzled when voters do not vote their self-interest. How, Democrats keep asking me, can any poor person vote for Republicans when Republican policies hurt them so badly? The Democratic response is to try to explain over and over to the conservative poor why voting Democratic would serve their self-interest. Despite all evidence that this is a bad strategy, Democrats keep banging their heads against the wall. In the 2012 election, despite all evidence that this is a bad strategy, Democrats keep banging their heads against the wall. In the 2012 election, Democrats argued that Mitt Romney's policies would only help the rich. But most poor conservatives still voted Republican against their self-interest, even though Romney was recorded saying not very nice things about the poor in general. It is claimed that about a third of the populace thinks that they are or someday will be in the top 1%, and that for this reason they vote on the basis of a hoped-for future self-interest. But what about the other two-thirds who have no dream that they will ever get super rich? They are clearly not voting in their self-interest or even their hoped-for future self-interest. People do not necessarily vote in their self-interest. They vote their identity. They vote their values. They vote for who they identify with. They may identify with their self-interest. That can happen. It is not that people never care about their self-interest, but they vote their identity. And if their identity fits their self-interest, they will vote for that. It is important to understand this point. It is a serious mistake to assume that people are simply always voting in their self-interest. A third mistake is this. There is a metaphor that political campaigns are marketing campaigns where the candidate is the product and the candidate's positions on issues are the features and qualities of the product. This leads to the conclusion that polling should determine which issues a candidate should run on. Which issue shows the highest degree of support for a candidate's position? If it's prescription drugs, you run on a platform featuring prescription drugs. Is it keeping Social Security? Then you run on a platform featuring Social Security. You make a list of the top issues, and those are the issues you run on. You also do market segmentation. District by district, you find out the most important issues, and those are the ones you talk about when you go to that district. It does not work. Sometimes it can be helpful, and in fact the Republicans use it in addition to their real practice. But their real practice and the real reasons for their success is this. They say what they idealistically believe. They say it. They talk to their base using the frames of their base. Liberal and progressive candidates tend to follow their polls and decide that they have to become more centrist by moving to the right. The conservatives do not move at all to the left, and yet they win. Why? What is the electorate like from a cognitive point of view? Probably 35 to 40% of people have a strict father model governing their politics. Similarly, there are people who have a nurturant view governing their politics, probably another 35 to 40%. And then there are all the people who are said to be in the middle. There is no ideology of the middle. There is no moral system or political position that defines the middle. The people in the middle are largely biconceptuals, people who are conservative on some issues and progressives on others, in all sorts of combinations. Notice that I said governing their politics. We all have both models, either actively or passively. Progressives see a John Wayne movie or an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and they can understand it. They do not say, I don't know what's going on in this movie. They have a strict father model, at least passively. And if you are a conservative and you understand Oprah, you have a nurturant parent model, at least passively. Everyone has both worldviews because both worldviews are widely present in our culture. But people do not necessarily live by one worldview all of the time. So, the question is, are you living by one of the family-based models? But that question is not specific enough. There are many aspects of life, and many people live by one family-based model in one part of their lives and another in another part of their lives. I have colleagues who are nurturant parents at home and liberals in their politics, but strict fathers in their classrooms. Reagan knew that blue-collar workers who were nurturant in their union politics were often strict fathers at home. He used political metaphors that were based on the home and family, and got them to extend their strict father way of thinking from the home to politics. This is very important to understand. The goal is to activate your model in the people in the middle. The people who are in the middle have both models, used regularly in different parts of their lives. What you want to do is to get them to use your model for politics, to activate your worldview and moral system in their political decisions. You do that by talking to people using frames based on your worldview. However, in doing that, you do not want to offend the people in the middle who have up to this point made the opposite choice. Since they have and use both models in their lives, they might still be persuaded to activate the opposite model for politics. Clinton figured out how to handle this problem. He stole the other side's language. He talked about welfare reform, for example. He said the age of big government is over. He did what he wanted to do, only he took their language and used their words to describe it. It made them very mad. It turns out what is good for the goose is good for the gander, and guess what? When George W. Bush arrived, we got compassionate conservatism, the Clear Skies Initiative, healthy forests, no child left behind. This is the use of language to mollify people who have nurturant values while the real policies are strict father policies. This can even attract the people in the middle who might have qualms about you. This is the use of Orwellian language that means the opposite of what it says, to appease people in the middle at the same time as you pump up the base. That is part of the conservative strategy. Liberals and progressives typically react to this strategy in a self-defeating way. The usual reaction is, those conservatives are bad people. They are using Orwellian language. They are saying the opposite of what they mean. They are deceivers. Bad, bad. All true. But we should recognize that they use Orwellian language precisely when they have to, when they are weak, when they cannot just come out and say what they mean. Imagine they came out supporting a dirty skies bill, or a forest destruction bill, or a kill public education bill. They would lose. They are aware people do not support what they are really trying to do. Orwellian language points to weakness. Orwellian weakness. When you hear Orwellian language, note where it is, because it is a guide to where they are vulnerable. They do not use it everywhere. It is very important to notice this and use their weakness to your advantage. A very good example relates to the environment. The right's language man is Frank Lutz, who puts out books of language guidelines which are used as training manuals for conservative candidates, as well as lawyers, judges, and other public speakers, even high school students who want to be conservative public figures. In these books, Luntz tells you what language to use for a conservative advantage. It was Luntz who persuaded conservatives to stop talking about global warming because it sounded too scary and suggested human agency. Instead, he brought climate change into our public discourse on the grounds that climate sounded kind of nice. Think palm trees. And change just happens, with no human agency. By 2003, with the scientific consensus going against conservatives, Luntz suggested Orwellian language. He suggested using words like healthy, clean, and safe even when talking about coal or nuclear power plants. hence clean coal. Conservative legislation that increases pollution is called the Clear Skies Act. He is supporting global warming denial by suggesting that people say that the science is not settled and that our economy should not be threatened. Recently, his focus group research showed support for cap-and-trade legislation. He has suggested using the language of energy independence, which supports continued fracking, but not talking about saving the planet.
And that was the end of Chapter 2 of Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values, and Frame the Debate by George Lakoff, narrated by Chris Sorensen. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, former President Donald Trump, but this starts with former Vice President Pence.
More than 240 years ago, our founders wrote words that have echoed through the ages. They declared these truths to be self-evident, that we are, each of us, endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. 45 years ago, the Supreme Court of the United States turned its back on the unalienable right to life. But in that moment, our movement began. A movement that continues to win hearts and minds. A movement defined by generosity, compassion, and love. And a movement that 1 year ago inaugurated the most pro-life president in American history, President Donald Trump. From preventing taxpayer dollars from funding abortion overseas to empowering states to respect life in Title X, nominating judges who will uphold our God-given liberties enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. This president has been a tireless defender of life and conscience in America. And today, President Trump will do even more and defend the most vulnerable in our society. My friends, life is winning in America because love saves lives. And know as you march for life that your compassion, your persistence, your activism, and your prayers are saving lives. And this pro-life generation should never doubt. We are with you. This president stands with you. And he who said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you," is with you as well. And I believe with all of my heart, with your continued dedication and compassion, with pro-life majorities in the Congress, with President Donald Trump in this White House, and with God's help, we will restore the sanctity of life to the center of American law. And so, with a grateful heart, on this 45th annual March for Life, it is now my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
Today, tens of thousands of families, students, and patriots, and really just great citizens gather here in our nation's capital. You come from many backgrounds, many places, but you all come for one beautiful cause: to build a society where life is celebrated, protected, and cherished. The March for Life is a movement born out of love. You love your families, you love your neighbors, you love our nation, and you love every child, born and unborn, because you believe that every life is sacred, that every child is a precious gift from God. We know that life is the greatest miracle of all. We see it in the eyes of every new mother who cradles that wonderful, innocent, and glorious newborn child in her loving arms. I want to thank every person here today and all across our country who works with such big hearts and tireless devotion to make sure that parents have the care and support they need to choose life. because of you, tens of thousands of Americans have been born and reached their full God-given potential because of you. You're living witnesses of this year's March for Life theme, and that theme is Love Saves Lives. Under my administration, we will always defend the very first right in the Declaration of Independence, and that is the right to life. We are protecting the sanctity of life and the family as the foundation of our society. But this movement can only succeed with the heart and the soul and the prayer of the people. That hope is the true gift of this incredible movement that brings us together today. It is the gift of friendship, the gift of mentorship, and the gift of encouragement, love, and support. Those are beautiful words and those are beautiful gifts. And most importantly of all, it is the gift of life itself. That is why we march. That is why we pray. And that is why we declare that America's future will be filled with goodness, peace, joy, dignity, and life for every child of God. Thank you to the March for Life, special, special people, and we are with you all the way. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you. Thank you.
And that was Donald Trump. Back in a minute. Thank you. The following is one of my voiceover demos. If you're a voiceover artist and you would like to advertise one of your demos on my podcast, please send an MP3 to thedrill12, all one word, at gmail.com. That's thedrill12 at gmail.com. Back in a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", fifth year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, fourth year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.